It is Saturday, October 5th, 2024, and the Chicago White Sox are 99 and 63, the winners of the AL Central, and will have a shot to play the wild card series, the divisional series against the Orioles very shortly. We finish with the best record in the major leagues. Andrew Vaughn, you can see it on the scoreboard or on the leaderboards there, the best OPS in the American League, leads the league in RBI. Does hit 41 homers. Tim Anderson second in batting average at 309, and you see Dustin Harris, who was almost in Chicago, finishes with the American League lead. Dylan Cease second in ERA, first in wins. I don't know where he is in strikeouts. I can check that. See how close he was to the Triple Crown. 241, and the leader had... So he was fourth in strikeouts in the American League. So a very good season for Cease. He'll most likely finish up as the runner-up for the Cy Young for the second time in 3 seasons. Shohei Ohtani leads the league in home runs in the National League. Combines for a 10 WAR season if you combine his WAR total with his RWAR total. A 3 ERA pitcher and a hitter that can get you 46 bombs. Kyle Schwarber also paces the American League in home runs. He led the National League last year, but he's still not like a valuable player. He's worth less than 2 wins just because he strikes out so much and he's such a bad defender. But he's already close to 300 homers in his career. We're basically wire to wire in the AL Central this season. The Twins didn't present much trouble for us. We did slip up towards the end of the year, going 13 and 12 in September. For a portion of the month, we were actually under 500, and it continues the trend of up and down play this season that were really buoyed by 2 great months. We didn't have an awful month at all this year, but we were kind of decidedly average outside of May and August. Now, we were good in August, but I wouldn't say that our deadline acquisitions were responsible for that. So if we go, I don't know if I released him. Yes, I released him on September 1st, Tyler Anderson, and he's actually rebounded well with Kansas City. He was a free agent next season, so he had another year under contract, but he was just so bad with us in 27 and a third innings. I wanted to give a young pitcher the shot, and I didn't really want to bring Anderson back. He goes to Kansas City and has much better results, but he wasn't happy to be with us, and I had guys that I'd rather put in that position. So if we look at our pitching staff at the end of the year, we went into Cease already. A magnificent season for him, the best of his career, and he has had over 5 RWAR the past 3 years. He's going to want a good deal in arbitration, but I said in the last video I'm not really thinking about extending him in the long term this year, given his walk rate. I'll see how he does next year, though, but we still have, I think, 3 seasons of team control with him. No, 1 additional, and then I'll extend the qualifying offer to him, and we'll see if he accepts that. Next pitcher, Zach Wheeler, who definitely cooled off since we checked in with him last, but he did have a good season this year, especially when you look at last season. Oh, this is Giolito. Why did it show him first? Okay, anyways, this is Giolito. He had a great year, 3.17 ERA, identical RWAR total to last year, but his ERA actually rose. The BABIP stayed low. Our defense got even better. He struck out more batters, walked a bit more. Home runs were down. FIP was way lower. So a better season this year for Giolito. I don't think that he was... he was probably a similar value just because of the defense that was behind him. And he did pitch less innings this season than last. We'll get into Wheeler here. This is Wheeler. 5.9 RWAR, but like I said, he did cool off. If we look at his splits, in August and September, he wasn't nearly as dominant as he was for the entire season. You see a 2.47 ERA plus in April, 1.48 in May, 1.59 in June, and 1.41 in July. August down to around league average at 1.11. And then in September, he was below league average at 92. But it still constitutes, he'll be high up in the Cy Young rankings. 5.9 R WAR, 135 ERA plus, an ERA around 3. Finishes the season with a 5 1/3 inning start with no earned runs. He's a free agent after the year, and I'm still concerned about his regression, but he doesn't want that bad of a number. And with Yohan Moncada's contract coming off the books next year, he did have a good year. I'll get into him later. But I don't think I'm going to accept this $25 million team option. And if we trade Eloy, I think I'll find enough money to be able to re-sign Wheeler. Because this top 3 and now top 4, I did extend Sonny Gray 1 year, $6 million, would be coming back intact. And it would just be a mission of finding a 5th starter, of which I have a couple options. And I wouldn't have to spend on a player like that. So Sonny Gray finishes with a 3.5 R WAR, 3.79 ERA. His most valuable season of his career since 2019 with the Cincinnati Reds. And I'm very happy with the results that we got from him, signing him for only $2.8 million. I wanted to bring him back because he wants to be here. And he just was a solid starter, throwing 180 1/3 innings. And if things don't work out, it's not that much money at all for a guy like Gray, who's going to be 35 next year, but was really valuable for us. Christian Mania, I did call up towards the end of the season. He didn't make a start, but he pitched well in relief. The FIP wasn't as good, but I am excited about him going into next year. He'll compete for the 5th starter spot. Number 72 ranked prospect in baseball, almost 22 years old. Liam Hendricks, another guy who was cold towards the end of the year in September, but still finished with 2 WAR as a closer, 31 saves. Could have had closer to 50 if he was the full-time closer earlier in the year, but Andrew Abbott took that spot from him until I sent him down. If we look at his splits, you see that in September he was kind of very bad in 14 innings of 5 ERA after, dominating all year. The FIP still maintained the same kind of stature, so I'm not worried about him regressing. He's also a free agent after the year, but as a 35-year-old closer, I'm not really willing to pay him 3 years, $27 million. Maybe his numbers come down. It was around 10 the last time I checked, so we'll see. Andrew Abbott comes back up and pitches well in the few innings that he pitched in the majors. I want to see his major league stats. So he came back up in September after being demoted in June, 14 innings, 2.51 ERA, and a 3.96 FIP. He'll be a piece next year, and also another guy that could compete for the 5th spot in the rotation. Again, Jonathan Stever comes back up as well, another guy who can compete for the 5th spot in the rotation. If we look at his splits after coming back up to the big league club, 16 1/3 innings, 3.31 ERA. Not a great FIP, but still good results from Stever. He'll be back up next year. Bert Cole, the ratings are low, but as a ground ball pitcher, he's going to get good results if you have a good defense behind him, and that's what happened with him. 90 innings as a long reliever. He started games up until, I'd say, about May, if I check and remember correctly. Started until June. Early June is when he switched to being a reliever. And he would go 2 or 3 innings in appearance. Did a good job with us, eventually pitching 90 innings. And for $3 million, a 2-WAR player is a good investment. I might keep him around next year, but these ratings are so low. I'll see if anybody wants to take him. We do have him until 2026 if that vesting option kicks in. Stever, we already talked about. Mark Leiter Jr. is a guy that I forgot to talk about in the last video. And he just was solid. 2.88 ERA in 59 1/3 innings. Another guy that could ostensibly compete for the 5th starter role. I don't know if it'll be him. He is in arbitration. He's 33. I do want to see, he didn't pitch well again in September. The pitching was bad. We were allowing close to 5 runs a game. It seemed like games where we'd allow 8 to 10 runs more often than I'd seen. This FIP worries me, so I might look to move on from Leiter Jr. in the future as he ages into his mid-30s, but the ratings are still there, and the results have been solid for Leiter. Brandon Williamson started a few games down the stretch after I released Tyler Anderson. He wasn't great. Does give us a win above replacement, but in 105 and 2/3 innings. I am conflicted on Williamson. I believe he's not out of options. So we'll still have him kicking around for the next few seasons unless I find a trade for him. The control is always going to be an issue with him, but he doesn't allow home runs. And he should be striking out more guys than he does, I think. Had a good year in AAA. We'll keep him around. And he's still got some improvement to do at 26. Yovani Moran, 2.69 ERA in 60 1/3 innings. 1.5 RWAR, but the FIP was above 4. So we'll see if Moran can continue his success that he's had. Had a rough go of it in August, but the rest of the year was great. He's on the minimum, so I'm not going to get rid of him. And he's a lefty. He's been a good waiver pickup for us after an ERA under a run and a half last season. Yennier Cano was a kind of long reliever for us. Only pitched 52 innings, but was good. A 3.29 ERA. This bullpen isn't full of elite arms, but we were competent enough to scratch out enough results from these guys. Second in bullpen ERA, but 6th in FIP. First in starter ERA, first in runs against. These numbers were a lot better towards the beginning of the year, but like I said, as we lagged off on the pitching side of things in September, these numbers declined precipitously. But that plus 46.8 zone rating is really important. The offense did improve as well as the season went on. So these two units kind of counterbalanced each other as we finished with the best record in Major League Baseball. But if we look at, if I have zone rating up here, I think I do. Nick Ahmed finishes with 16.3 at shortstop. Ryan McMahon with 11.6 at third base. And Luis Robert with 8.4 in center field, along with contributions from Kevin Biggio, Yohan Moncada, Vaughn, Anderson, Dingler at other positions. We didn't really have any negative defenders this season. Sheets barely played, and Eloy was a DH. And the only guy you could make a case for would be Stubbs, but even he wasn't a negative framer. And Dingler, even though he was terrible on offense, was a very good framer for us this season. So I'm glad about the production we got from our defense, even though like Nick Ahmed and Dylan Dingler were two of the worst qualified hitters in baseball, but they gave us value with their gloves, and that is important in this game. So if we sort by WAR, Andrew Vaughn finished the season on a tear, and I'm hoping he continues this into the playoffs. Finishes first in WRC+, first in RBI, first in slug. I don't know if he's going to win MVP this year, but he certainly will place. Adley Rutschman at catcher has a great year for the Orioles, and they make the playoffs. Anthony Volpe, after his 6 WAR season a season ago, has another one, but not as good. I think Vaughn will place higher than him, and Altuve comes in with 6 WAR and a previous MVP winner. So I think Rutschman and Altuve will be Vaughn's primary competition if DeGrom, who has another incredible year, doesn't steal his thunder and win the first pitching MVP since I think it would be Verlander in 2011. But Vaughn was wonderful. Finally gets above 40 homers, 41. And when we checked in last time, he was in a bit of a slump in June and July, but it was really just because of that BABIP. And then he comes back when the BABIP normalizes. OPS plus of 212 in August, 196 in September. If he was just above league average here, he would have been by far and away the MVP winner, but that slump in the midseason really cost him. But Vaughn is our superstar at this point in the simulation. I can't extend him to a long-term deal right now, but I would like to as soon as I can. Luis Robert cools off with the bat. I think when we checked in, he was sitting at 4 WAR. He finishes with 4.5. I talked about his defense, but the hitting is there, and then he plays 150 games for the first time in his career. First time playing more than 120 games for Robert. Really cold month in September, along with one in July. A hot month in June and August, as well as some consistency in April and May. Buoy him. He had a good year. His ratings, hitting-wise, have come down, but we do have him under contract for a fairly affordable number, and he'll stick around with his glove and his ability. Tim Anderson, 4 WAR, 117 WRC+. I'll give him the qualifying offer in free agency this year. I think he'll accept. He's not really looking for a huge deal. He's not going to get this in free agency. I'm not going to give him this deal. there's absolutely no way I'm paying a 31-year-old that can only play second base and doesn't walk 7 years at $168 million. But Anderson has been great for us in this sim so far, and I'm happy about his transition to second base. Didn't, again, have the glove that I'd want him to. I thought he'd be able to win a gold glove here, but hits over 300, provides good second base production, and second base hitters are hard to come by. Ryan McMahon finishes as an above-average hitter on offense after a strong end of the year. Nearly 4 WAR for the third baseman. Outstanding value with the glove. And he was very good in August. 133 OPS plus, just below average in September. This was a high BABIP in July and August. It went down to 300. But if he is around a 300, 310 BABIP throughout the season, then he's going to be, I think, an average hitter. And that's all you need him to be with his glove. I'm really happy about his acquisition for Garrett Crochet, who does have an average year with Colorado, and his ratings have come up a bit as a lefty. But I'm happy to exchange a reliever, an average reliever that kind of you can get anywhere for a third baseman that is good defensively and is an above-average hitter right now, or at least an average hitter. He's not above average. Yohan Moncada, 2.5 WAR, 112 WRC plus. Not as good as I'd want from him, but how his ratings have declined, I'm okay with it. He did have a huge month of August, 157 OPS plus, 6 homers, a full WAR that month, and you see the majority of his production comes in May and August. He's a contributor. It's really all you can say. Oscar Colas finishes the season hot after a terrible start. He's an average replacement level player, an average starter level player this year at almost 2 WAR. With the glove, he comes up in right field and plays well. I had him in left field the majority of the year, but then in a short amount of playing time when Moncada was injured towards the end of the season, he played well in right. I might have to think about moving him back there next season. By OPS plus, he's an above-average hitter. WRC plus, he's not, and that I think is just because he strikes out so much. But again, in August and September, he was an all-star level hitter after 4 months of tough sledding for him, and that's after the BABIP finally normalized to a level around 300. His power came back, and he'll be back next year. 24 homers, 95 RBI. He'll still be a middle-of-the-order player for us next season. Kevin Biggio, I call him back up after an injury to Tim Anderson. That 1.6 WAR is his minor league number. He was good in AAA, but bad for us here in the bigs. He is going to make the playoff roster, though, just because of his positional versatility and his left-handed bat. I'll show you that we did trade for Zach McKinstry. Where is he? Is he still up here? Yeah, okay. He's not going to make the playoff roster, but we traded for Zach McKinstry, who was in AAA with the Tigers all season long. And he finishes with a negative .7 WAR and only 42 plate appearances. I just couldn't keep him up with Biggio down there. We got him and Austin Bergner, who pitched a few innings for us, a minor league pitcher with some options left, who can also start, so he's a flexible player at 27. Came up for us and was whatever. He was good in Detroit, and we trade Paul Sewald for those two players, who has a good end of the year in Detroit, but was not pitching well for us, and I didn't really have a spot for him in the bullpen at that point in the year. So we'll keep Biggio on the playoff roster. Eloy Jimenez, another guy who heated up towards the end of the year, but not as well as you'd hope, given that he's a designated hitter. He was really good in May and June, and I thought that he was going to be the Eloy that we all wanted him to be. Then after a tough July, he comes into August and September as just an average hitter. Does finish the season with 27 bombs, 85 RBI, the same thing as last year. He's a very predictable commodity, although he does hit for average better this year than he did in the season prior. Nick Ahmed, already talked about him. Very, very bad offensively, but very, very good defensively. I just would wish that this BABIP would rise a bit, and he could be very, very valuable, a 2 to 3 WAR player if he would hit around an 80 OPS plus, maybe 85. He's under contract next season, and I think I'll keep him around just because he performed so well for us with the glove, and I think he'll win a Gold Glove. I hope he does. Dylan Dingler, another guy that just needs to improve with the bat. If the BABIP comes up, and with Detroit, he did have a year around 306 BABIP, so I'm confident that next season he'll be able to improve. I'll look into different catchers that are available, but I'm not looking to spend big at the position with the depth now that we have in the farm system that I'm hoping on. We've got Harry Ford, who wasn't good in AAA, wasn't good in AA, so I don't really know about him at this point. We have Hackenberg, who could compete with Dingler in spring training, I think, after a really good season in AAA. I will be watching that position battle, I think, those two players duking it out. Jimmy Crooks was a guy that I've talked about we traded for with the Cardinals last season for Jose Ruiz, actually in the offseason. And Ruiz didn't have a good year FIP-wise, but had a good year with the ERA. Had a good season with the Cardinals. So Crooks is another guy that can compete. And then we do have Rene Lastras in A-ball right now, who is very, very good and is the catcher of the future, not showing up on the top 100 prospects list, but I expect him to in the near future. We leave off at Sheets was good around a 130 OPS plus for a good portion of the year, then he cooled off. Again, that's going to happen in such a small sample size. I think I'm ready to move on from him after the year, after he enters arbitration. A few teams called on him on the trade deadline, but I wanted his bat in the lineup as a pinch hit option. With the development of Wes Kath in the minors, I brought him up to AAA. This skill set has really ballooned for him. 131 WRC plus in AA this year and almost a full season workload. Comes up to AAA and 180 plate appearances. Does have an inflated BABIP, but a 170 OPS plus total, WRC plus total, 356, 425, 669. Hits 37 bombs in minor league play this season. I'm excited about him. And these ratings have actually come up at third base, and where now he's a competent third baseman. I'm very excited about Wes Kath at only 22 years old. I'm happy that we picked him over Colson Montgomery as the left-handed DH first baseman of the future. Go back into the lineup. Garrett Stubbs doesn't show up with the bat. We'll let him go after the year. I might call up Jimmy Crooks as the lefty catcher, or if I find a veteran that is available for cheap, I'll bring him in. But with Pedro Grifol, the way that he manages games, he doesn't really like to pinch hit a lot, and he doesn't like to spread around playing time. He's not a guy that's going to be sabermetrically inclined to have a lefty-righty split lineup, and that's something that I'd like to improve, but he's been so good as our manager that I can't fire him. I'm not justified in firing him unless the postseason success is, again, this year not what we want. So if we lose in this division series after being killed in the wild card series last year, I might entertain firing him because I would like a manager that better utilizes platoon splits. And Elvis Andrus, I re-signed. He's a captain. This is when I had Biggio down in AAA and I needed a captain. I also didn't talk about in the last video that I did cut Brandon Drury after a bad start for us this season, and I just, I wasn't going to keep him around. 50 plate appearances, what it wasn't hitting well. I had Westberg that I wanted to see how he'd do. We check in Colson Montgomery, he's right here. 172 plate appearances for Philadelphia, negative WAR as a 22-year-old. Like I said, I'm very happy that we kept Kath over him if I compare these two players. Wes just has the better potential at first and third base, and I might train him a little bit at second so he can be passable. So that's the team right now. We will be playing Baltimore in the division series. I want to go into the depth in the minors really quickly. Trell Tatum, finishes with a good season in AAA. I brought him up for 29 plate appearances in the majors when we had some injuries in the outfield. He'll be up next season. I think I'm going to obviously trade Eloy, lose Moncada. Cespedes is up right now, but I'm going to DFA him after the year, I think. Maui Ahuna does finish as a better player in AAA, and these hitting ratings, the potential has come up on them quite a bit since he started hitting better. I think he'll also be up, and it also depends on if I lose Tim Anderson. If I do, Maui Ahuna will be the opening day second baseman. I'm fairly confident in that. We did trade for Drew Gilbert at the trade deadline, who in real life just went to the Mets from the Astros, but we trade him after he was traded to the Rangers in a deal involving Andrew Heaney and Jose Abreu. We trade him we trade Sebastian Rivero, who was a minor league catcher for us, comes up for Texas and hits okay. He's a righty, redundant with Hackenberg. I wasn't too upset about losing him. He does have options, but, whatever. We pick up Gilbert and Josh Sborz, who does get hurt for us, unfortunately. I think he'll be back if we make it to the ALCS, and he was very good for us in 22 and 2/3 innings after being good for Texas. Happy about this trade to pick up Gilbert, a lefty outfielder who can play center field passably but be kind of a utility guy for us, age 24 right now. Talked about Tyler Black already, didn't hit well in AAA for us if you look at this negative 1.4 WAR with the Charlotte Knights. Alan Cerda, 177 WRC plus in AAA this season. Very good season for him. He'll be knocking on the door as a right-handed hitting outfielder, and maybe the heir apparent to Eloy Jimenez if Lloyd El Chapelli does not work out, but he'll be up next year too. We have a bunch of outfield options, and I'm not really worried. And even Oscar Colas could move out of the outfield to first base or DH. We'll see. We have a lot of flexibility with our sluggers next season. Chris Wright in AAA, I'm excited to bring him up next season. The control's a problem, but he's a lefty reliever that is a strikeout artist. Cole Seamus, I regret putting him on the 40-man roster, but I think he will be Rule 5 eligible after the year, and I wouldn't want to lose him. Does have a good year in AAA this season. DFA Jorge Vera, his ratings have declined precipitously. Namely, his control goes down to 25. I don't think he'll ever be a contributor for us with the big league club, unfortunately. Striking out 13 batters per nine, but walking almost 8. Kevin Dowdle was a 13th round pick. I immediately started him at AA. Teams really like him. He's a captain in right field, not a great fielder. I think I'm going to look to trade him in some sort of package in the offseason because he seems to be worth far more to other teams than he is to me. Wilfred Veras improved after going down to a 40 potential. He was up in AAA for a cup of coffee, but goes back down to AA after I had some more players come in. The fielding profile is what worries me. He doesn't really have a home defensively anywhere, but he can play everything kind of passably. He just has to hit well if he's going to succeed. He might be a guy we end up trading. Luis Rodriguez is another outfielder that I have my eye on still. Jimmy Crooks, again, if this bat comes along in spring training, I could see him come in as our left-handed catcher. Move down the minor leagues. Nothing really going on here. Jacob Walsh, though, was our second-round pick. Has one plate appearance in Kannapolis after one plate appearance in rookie ball. And it's extremes. Negative 141 WRC plus in rookie ball, 367 WRC plus in A ball. He is a guy that is going to come along as a lefty first baseman and just be amazing. Hopefully. We'll see. But at 21, the bat's already this far along. I'll probably move him up to high A in the future. Lorenzo Carrier, okay with the bat, another outfielder that I'm excited for. Brandon Winokur has a good year in rookie ball, and so I move him up to A ball. Doesn't hit well there. And around here, anything? Carson DeMartini is another left-handed, probably going to end up being a first baseman. Even though I lamented the White Sox having so many of these guys, I've found so many in the draft. I pick up DeMartini in the 4th round, and with this bat, that's a really good pick. It was already this far along. He hit very well for the Lakeshore Chinooks of the Northwoods League after a good season in Pulaski in the Appalachian League last season. So DeMartini's a guy I'm excited for. Christian Chatterton didn't pitch well. Another pitcher that needs to come along. But that's what we've got for the minor leagues. I think this offseason is going to be very fun, no matter what the playoffs have in store for us, because this team, while it may be having the best record in the American League right now, it's going to be in flux with the amount of free agents we have and the amount of roster fitting we have to do. I think we do have enough talent in AAA to have a seamless transition into next year while possibly losing some pieces. And this rebuild has gone way, way better than I could have anticipated. We'll look at Baltimore here, playing them in the divisional series. 89-73, second in the AL East. I talked about Rutschman already, 6.6 WAR, the American League leader in that statistic at catcher, being such a good hitter. 90-72 Pythagorean total, so they are a real team, but the pitching, much like this season in real life for the Orioles, is not where you want it to be. I talked about, though, in the offseason episode, their offense is the best in baseball, though. Number one in runs scored. They did sign Julio Urias, who had a good year, 2.80 ERA, but only 138 innings pitched. Jordan Montgomery, who has a replacement level year. Dean Kramer, who's here, doesn't pitch well. And the third guy they had, I think, was Pablo Lopez. I don't know if they don't have him anymore. Juan Porras is the guy they have right now, who was in the KBO, and he was awful for them. Carlos Carrasco they brought in. Had a good season for Toronto. They trade for him. Gets hurt, it seems. Felix Bautista, the Mountain, is still kicking in their bullpen. Grayson Rodriguez is also there. Wow, what an awful year. He started some games. They probably brought in Carrasco to replace him. I'm surprised they got this far with the pitching staff. But I guess, you trade for Corey Lee and then Henry Davis is your backup catcher. What does he look like in the field? Not very good. He is a very good bat. Not as a catcher, though, but I'd DH him. He has come along well. What did they trade for him? Zach Showalter? What? They were just giving away Henry Davis like that, the Pirates? Okay. What happened to Pablo Lopez? They traded for him, or they might have signed him or traded for him. He's with the Mets now. Who was the other guy that they picked up? They had three guys they picked up in free agency, I thought. Urias, Montgomery, and somebody else. I need to know this. I'm sorry. It's going to eat at me. Too many moves. About October. I don't think there's going to be any free agent signings here. What about December? Ryan Thompson, no. Kyle Bradish, gone. Trade away John Means for Jefferson Curo's in the system. How many catchers do the Orioles need? Mitch Keller was the other guy they got, and he's in Norfolk having... he had an okay year for them, 1.7 WAR. I wonder why he's not up with the club. That was the guy that I was looking for. But the Orioles on offense, Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, great season after a stellar rookie year last year. Didn't win Rookie of the Year, but the Wild Card Series MVP this season for the O's. Anthony Santander, 32 bombs, 100 RBI. Kobe Mayo comes up. I had an opportunity to trade for him, but since he's only a first base type, I didn't. And he's a righty, so he would compete with Andrew Vaughn, but he's come along and is a captain. Kyle Stowers, doing okay for them too. Christian Arroyo, nice season. Ced Mullins, very good season in center field. Mountcastle, yeah, it's reasonable to see why this was the best offense in baseball, although their defense might leave some to be desired. Austin Hayes, is he hurt? He's just a bench bat for them this season, I guess, but he's still good, not having the season or the career right now and out of the park that he is in real life. And Jorge Mateo barely plays this season for Baltimore. So that's who we'll face in the divisional series. I'll come back. If we are in the later rounds of the playoffs, I'll cut to that. If not, I'll see you for the next video, which will preview the offseason. And thank you for watching. See you later.